Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today you are going to be witnessing the highest experience that anyone was able to achieve over 2019, at least that was uploaded onto the WOT Replays website. Although I have to say, I decided to omit some of the replays because server crashes happen. Let me tell you, it's absolutely hilarious when, well, it's hilarious for the player involved, when everybody seems to get disconnected apart from them, and then they just go into the enemy spawn and they farm up 14 kills. Yeah, a bit of a cheeky one that, so I decided that doesn't really count. But the player who does actually manage to make it count is Magnesiummangel, which I believe, does that mean magnesium deficiency in German? Something like that. Anyway, they're going to be playing in the Tier 8 Chinese premium tank destroyer. It is the WZ-121FT, a vehicle which I rated very highly inside my tier list for the Tier 8 premium tanks. Somebody actually disagreed with me about that in the comments, saying, wow, the fact that that tank is high, that tank is absolutely ridiculous and you're a muppet. Well, of course, it's an opinion, right? But I think I actually stand by my opinion about this vehicle. I think it's an incredibly strong tank. It just has great traverse, it has great DPM, it has enough penetration, especially with its premium ammunition. A Tier 8 tank destroyer with 310mm of heat pen as well. Oof! It's pretty disgusting really when we think about it. This thing just does it all. It's got 6 degrees of gun depression as well, which is pretty outrageous for the vehicle, and you're going to see Magnesium managing to actually work that 6 degrees of gun depression incredibly well from this position. So to be able to get the most experience in World of Tanks, there's no wonder why Magnesium is in a +2 matchup here, or -2 matchup. He's against Tier 10 tanks, right, in his Tier 8 tank destroyer. And that's because I believe it's still the case that if you're shooting tanks that are 1 tier higher than you, you get 10% extra experience on the damage that you dealt or the spotting that you would deal. And it also works out that way if you're engaging tanks that are 2 tiers higher, then you get 20% extra experience. Which is why it was so exciting for me back in the day to be in those wonderful Tier 5 light tanks, engaging Tier 10 vehicles, and I guess you were getting 50% more experience, which is why still to this day, my highest ever experience inside World of Tanks was in the VK2801, back when it used to be the little Tier 5 German light tank. Now it's at Tier 6. You can't meet Tier 10 tanks in that vehicle these days. One thing I will admit though is that back in the day, to be able to achieve the highest experience I ever did, which I think was 3,000 or something, although that is with a premium account, so it was probably more like 2,250 base or something like that. I did that with the old derp gun. And the derp guns back in the day didn't have 100mm of heat penetration, they had 150. And so if you managed to get your VK2801 behind something like an E100 and you just got to farm him up, oh my lord, that was some serious experience that you could manage to rack up in a tank like that. Anyway, now that I've told you all about my experience, heroics that you can't really even do anymore, at least with those kind of vehicles, let's focus on what Magnesium is going to achieve here in the Tier 8 Chinese premium tank destroyer. Alright, so immediately going Overwatch. I'm quite surprised to see that Magnesium is actually deciding to use binoculars inside this tank. It's going to make him exceptional at long range. However, this vehicle does have 380 meters base view range, so I think that once you've managed to get yourself a really good crew and you're willing to use a premium consumable that Magnesium is here, that you'd probably actually be better to use coated optics inside this tank. Bit bizarre that 380 base view range in a tank destroyer that doesn't seem to have like a big old weak point on top. Have no idea why this tank gets so much view range, but I guess that's just balancing for you. And it does allow the vehicle to be a little bit more dynamic than other tank destroyers, and you don't have to be so static. Although Magnesium is looking very static here. But bear with this replay, because things are going to get incredibly hot later on. So before they manage to get incredibly hot, let's talk about this tank in a little bit more detail. I've mentioned that it's got the alpha damage, it's got the gun, it's got the mobility, it's got the view range. Is there anything this tank doesn't have? One thing that this vehicle definitely does have, however, is great camo rating. As I've said multiple times, that if you have a low-profile vehicle, just like Magnesium's tank here, firstly, it's really nice for hiding it in bushes, right? But more importantly, the value of the camo rating of a vehicle is pretty much the height of the tank. There are probably obviously wargaming balancing factors here and there, but I think that their values are pretty much based on just how tall a vehicle is, and the taller the vehicle is, the easier it's going to be able to be seen, which kind of makes sense. But it also sucks for vehicles like the Mutant, right, which are very tall but aren't actually too wide, but incredibly beneficial for Soviet tanks, which are rather wide but usually not very tall. Alright, so Magnesium finally starting to open up, taking down the Tier 9 American turret to tank destroyer. And oh, this is where you want to be in a Tier 8 TD, right? Shooting into the side of Tier 10 tanks. Beautiful stuff right now. Will he be able to finish off the Object 140? Well, he's not going to need to, as a Centurion Action 10 claims the scalp of the Tier 10 Soviet medium tank. And that allows Magnesium to now turn attention to the Tier 9 medium tank. And when you think about it, this tank is pretty much that tank with better aim time, kind of pretty much the same mobility, way better DPM, the same kind of penetration, although its premium rounds will be a little bit less on this tank. But you just don't have the turret. Yeah, I'd probably far rather play this tank and have extra gun depression over the WZ-120. How does that even make sense? How does this tank have so much more gun depression than the WZ-120 has? Even though surely it should have less room inside the vehicle for the gun to be able to obviously go up on the other side, which is why you would say that gun depression would be limited in short tanks. So it doesn't seem to be that way in the LT-432 at least. Alright, so Magnesium manages to pick up 3 kills and 3,400 damage. Pretty good result, but so far, considering that we're 6 minutes into the replay, yeah, it doesn't look too impressive. Alright, so Magnesium starts to have a bit of an itchy feeling, knowing that a Soviet medium tank of the Tier 9 variety is going to make their way along the north of this map, so he sets up his binoculars, waiting for an ambush on the T-54. Thinks, well, I guess they're not there, so let's have a little bit of a move. Maybe I should flank around and try from a different position, right? Or maybe the T-54's gone to the north of the map. Wrong! Oh, don't you hate that in World of Tanks? When you've sat there, you've activated your binoculars, you're waiting for the enemy advance, it doesn't seem to come, and then you break it, you decide to go and change maneuvers, and then they manage to come around the corner and you spot them, and you're like, oh, curses. If you're in a turreted tank, it would make so much of a big deal, but in a tank like this, you've just got to keep moving, you've got to keep rolling. Can't turn around and interrupt that, although this vehicle does have incredibly good traverse speed. What is actually the effective traverse speed on this tank? 40 degrees base on hard terrain, and even on medium terrain is 33 degrees a second. That's outrageous. That's just look at how that thing turns. It's absolutely incredible. Once you've got yourself a really skilled driver and you've got yourself clutch braking, then you can really start to rock and roll in this tank. Oh my lord, look at what has happened with Magnesium's team along this flank. Looks like this Lerva and friends have created a bit of a graveyard here. So the Lerva bounces off Magnesium's armor, and he is now bypassing all the wrecks of his allies, and he should actually have a better rate of fire than the Lerva. That's astonishing that this tank has got a better rate of fire than the Lerva, and also has 120 extra alpha damage. Yeah, the new school versus the old school, right? Can you believe how mobile this vehicle is? I've definitely got to go and get myself into this tank a couple more times. And considering how much I actually enjoy the Tier 9 and sometimes even the Tier 10 Chinese tank destroyers, I think they're incredibly underrated, by the way. I might want to get some crew training done in the new year, right? Okay, so Magnesium, bored of kind of camping at the back, has decided to take it upon himself to be able to get forwards and to take the fight to the enemy team. And when you're in an assault tank destroyer like this, you can do that. So this is a big difference between binoculars and coated optics. If Magnesium was using coated optics, I think he would have spotted the T-28 in the open there. But because binoculars, actually the T-28 gets the jump. But it looks like the T-28 actually misses, and Magnesium is showing one of the things that actually does suck about this tank, and that is the accuracy is 0.37. While that's not exactly terrible, it's not very good either. But luckily Magnesium is dabbing that 2 key, as you rightly should in this situation in such a close game, especially when they've got artillery and trying to fire heat through the cheeks of the T-28. So the T-28 has got bored of bouncing standard rounds, but instead of dabbing the 2 key, has dabbed the 3 key, which isn't going to be as effective as the gold rounds that Magnesium was firing at the turreted American tank destroyer. And wham bam, good night T-28, who actually gets taken out by the Conqueror gun carrier on side Magnesium's team. Alright, so now that you've managed to break through that little chokehold, AMX M451, and you'll see that Magnesium's sixth sense doesn't go off, which lets him know he can just take a little bit of time, fully aim in the shot, put one into the side of the 51's turret, and now advance. Okay, now you're spotted. Watch out for that Conqueror gun carriage, and hopefully you're not going to be ambushed by a Batch Chatillon 12T. Although with the traverse speed of this tank, it should be able to handle a fight, even in close quarters combat against lights and even some medium tanks, as long as you don't get double tracked. Alright, so Magnesium manages to find the T-10 below. Doesn't have time to be able to reverse behind the bush, so just puts a big old shot. Wasn't expecting it to roll that high. 440 alpha damage, rolling up for 490. I will take those kind of rolls. Great stuff. shut down on the tier 9 heavy tank, and now it's all even. Well, actually, Magnesium's team is up by 1 kill, but it's blooming close here. 5,300 damage in a tier 8 tank destroyer, and there's still 4 vehicles left to deal with. This is an absolute tour de force game. Alright, so the Stritzwang is spotted out in the open, and the Bat Chatillon is actually harassing Magnesium's artillery. So the Stritzwang doesn't manage to spot Magnesium with his incredible camera rating, and they trade blows. Although the Chinese tank destroyer, with more hit points and with the higher alpha damage, is going to be able to take another hit from the Stritzwang, and the Stritzwang's definitely not going to be able to take a hit from the WZ-121. So that vehicle, 30mm of all-round armor piercing rounds would be able to actually overmatch, but the heat rounds will do just as good of a job. Well, actually, not just as good of a job. If for some reason the Stritzwang manages to angle his armor up to above 85 degrees, then the heat will no longer be able to penetrate it, whereas the armor piercing rounds will pretty much always go through that tank, as long as they don't manage to hit, I think, the very few areas over the track links to the right of the vehicle. So again, this AMX M451 showing either a very poor crew or just a complete lack of binoculars on that vehicle, and Magnesium probably showing that they have an exceptionally skilled concealment crew. They're able to sneak around, and this is why concealment is king, why I was talking about it in my video yesterday about it being one of the biggest differences between a free-to-play player and somebody who has all of the advantages through premium account. Okay, so Magnesium reloads a heat round, puts one through the side of the 51, and then follows it up with another heat round, now loading AP. I like this. He's probably expecting the Bat Chatillon 12T to be coming up after him, and why would he want to waste his last heat round on the Bat Chatillon when he can do exactly the same job with the AP? Beautiful play here. Just great prediction. That's the difference between your average players and your players like Magnesium. But just look at this tank, just bouncing 3 shells from the Bat Chat. The final shell doesn't damage tracks, and look at that traverse speed even on the sand. What is this tank? That's why I hate fighting these vehicles so much. They have ludicrous DPM, they have great pen, they have great frontal armor that you actually have to aim at unless you're an EO, like a tier 9 or tier 10 tank firing gold rounds at them, and they're just so darn powerful. This is the tank destroyer that doesn't give a monkeys. Although when the AMX M451 is above you like that, then your armor is definitely going to fall apart. So that was where Magnesium saved that precious heat round to be able to put into the turret armor of the 51, shutting down the tier 9 tank destroyer. And now, is it going to be his lucky day? No, it's not. Is it going to be a heartbreak at the end? Possibly. No. No, the Stritzwang S1 doesn't fire, and Magnesium has a little bit of a break to be able to relax. And look at this! The Jagdtiger and the T-30, who have just been pretty much chilling in the center of the map, are now inviting Magnesium to a platoon. Well, that is just absolutely cheeky. Magnesium puts an armor-piercing round through the Conqueror gun carriage there. Maybe if he had loaded high explosive, he would have been able to finish him off in a single shot, but he probably doesn't have time to waste, considering that the Stritzwang S1 was about 8th kill, 8,200 damage in a tier 8 tank in a +2 game. This is outrageous stuff right now. Why is Magnesium going to be able to find the Stritzwang S1 at the end of it? Where is that sneaky Swedish TD? He makes his way over the ridgeline, doesn't manage to find the Stritzwang S1. Is it time to cap now, Magnesium? Maybe the S1 has run north. He looks a bit hesitant. There's the S1. Magnesium comes around the corner and boom! Right through the front of the hull. What a round of World of Tanks. It was definitely a little bit slow, although not incredibly slow, but slow for the standards of the highest experience game of 2019. But when Magnesium opened up and let loose, pretty much demolishing an entire flank of mostly higher tier vehicles, this was truly one of my favorite games of 2019. So how much exactly was it? This was 2,441 base. Pretty much double what you would need to get an ace tanker in this vehicle, with those 9 kills and near 9,000 damage dealt, and a healthy profit with or without a premium account. But considering this is a premium tank, does that even really mean that much? Magnesium managed to block 1,300 damage, which should not be ignored in this situation, as it was the difference between him getting through this game and not. This tier 8 Chinese premium tank destroyer really does have it all. Nearly running out of ammunition at the end of the game. What a cracking round. This is actually Magnesium's 3rd mark of excellence on this tank as well. Congratulations to you. Probably setting a damage record for this vehicle, I could imagine. A Radley Walters medal for those 9 kills, the high caliber for that 9,000 damage, and a tank sniper for dealing most of it at long range. It truly was an absolutely cracking game. So Magnesium Magnesiummangel, congratulations to you on what I found to be the highest experience of 2019 that did not involve farming a bunch of offline tanks. Thank you so much for uploading it onto the WOT Replays website for the community to enjoy. And thank you so much for putting my Kiki name, QuickyBaby, in the title so you could get my attention. I know that you would want to be featured as well. The bar has been set. It's the end of the decade, although some people are saying it's not the end of the decade till the end of the next year. I don't care. It's the end of the decade in my mind. The bar has been set, boys and girls. Get out there, have a better game than this in 2020, and maybe you'll be on the channel next Christmas or New Year as well. So I hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments, what is the highest experience that you have ever achieved in World of Tanks, and what vehicle was it in? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.